Urgent, setting the scene. In May 1922, the Turkish national movement faces a synchronized crisis, an enemy army entrenched on the front lines, and an internal political rebellion within the parliament. The military situation is on a knife edge. Turkish forces have successfully halted the enemy at the Battle of Sakarya, but the war remains unfinished. Behind closed doors, commanders are preparing for the Great Offensive, the single strike meant to end the conflict. To manage the war effort, Mustafa Kemal Pasha had been granted absolute emergency powers as commander-in-chief. However, these powers were legally temporary, and their expiration date is now days away. As the army quietly moves into position for its most critical battle, the political leadership in the capital is preparing to vote on whether to strip their commander of his authority. The push to end Kemal's command comes from a faction known as the Second Group. This parliamentary opposition stands unified in their refusal to extend the military mandate. As this diagram of the assembly shows, the parliament fractured into opposing blocs. The Second Group argued that since the immediate threat to the capital had been repelled at Sakarya, the time for one-man rule had passed. They believed the democratic authority of the assembly must be restored. These deputies were driven by a deep-seated historical anxiety. They viewed the continuation of emergency powers as the beginning of a permanent dictatorship rather than a wartime necessity. This created a volatile deadlock. The nation's survival was caught between a genuine effort to protect democratic principles and the logistical requirements of a final military strike. The political procedure plays out to its conclusion. The vote is held, the extension fails, and the crisis becomes official. Legally, the situation is absolute. The Turkish army is now operating without a commander-in-chief while facing a fully mobilized enemy. Following the vote, the cabinet resigns. With no military head and no sitting cabinet, the primary executive and military decision-making bodies of the state are effectively paralyzed. Mustafa Kemal requests a secret parliamentary session to address the vacuum. He steps to the podium to confront the assembly. The deputies are forced to face a paradox. While the enemy across the trenches remains stationary, the Turkish military's own legal procedures have become the primary threat to its readiness. Kemal bypasses the ideological debate entirely. He does not argue about the philosophy of governance. Instead, he confronts the room with raw military facts. As the infographic bars here illustrate, the Turkish army was severely under-equipped. Kemal showed the assembly that the military was nowhere near the resource threshold required to guarantee a successful offensive. He then demonstrated how a committee-led command would function. The shifting nodes on this map show how critical information leaks when military strategy is subjected to public parliamentary debate. Secrecy, he argued, was impossible under their current demands. Finally, as these nodes collapse into a single central point of authority, Kemal delivered the harsh math of the battlefield. A slow-moving, decentralized command cannot successfully react to a centralized enemy command. Kemal then delivered his ultimatum. He would not leave the army without a leader. He declared that he would maintain his command regardless of the parliament's legal vote. This was a high-stakes gamble. Kemal risked his entire political legitimacy and faced potential charges of treason to force the assembly into choosing between legal procedure and military reality. The atmosphere in the parliamentary room finally shifted, as the harsh logistics of the war effort took priority over ideological concerns. Confronted with the military's collapse, Parliament held a revote. The chain of command reforged in bright gold, restoring Kemal's absolute powers. This central authority allowed a swift, unimpeded flow of commands, enabling the Great Offensive. By forcing a resolution to the bureaucratic struggle in this single session, Kemal ensured the war effort would not fracture from within. This crisis proves the Great Offensive was won twice. First, by unifying a dissenting government under one authority, and then by soldiers on the battlefield.